right, here we are for round 13 of the Magic Online Championships. On your left, we have Jerry T versus Jonathan Angelescu, and the players are just about to start. Jerry T, we saw last round take the match over Sam Black. Jonathan, what's he running?
So Jonathan is running a Naya Zoo deck. So Naya Company, it has 3 copies of Collected Company. Not often you see that card in multiples of anything but 4, with a kind of like mid-range curve of like Wild Nacatl, Noble Hierarch, Tarmogoyf, Loxodon Spider, and Knight of the Reliquary, as well as some kind of smaller numbers of Scavenging Ooze, Qasali Pride Mage, and Voice of Resurgence. So a pretty solid mid-range deck. It's got a bunch of creatures that are good against a Lightning Bolt. Like you'll see a Loxodon Smiter coming out at some point here. It's also good against the card Remand. But since Jerry has deck lists, that I think increases the odds that he wants to Lightning Bolt the Noble Hierarch here, because if he leaves Remand mana up and Jonathan plays a Loxodon Smiter, then that does not work out well for Jerry because Loxodon Smiter is uncounterable. And of course, being a 4/4 is unlightning boltable as well.
As people say, always bolt the bird. Do you always bolt the Hierarch in that case too?
Basically, when it goes wrong for you, it goes really wrong. And when you bolt it and it wasn't great to bolt it, it's not a big deal because you just traded 1 for 1. So here in this case, it worked out much better for Jerry to bolt the bird. And in this case, we're also going to see another one come out here, and Jerry's probably going to bolt that one as well because he's got Snapcaster plus Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good turn for him. Ancestral Vision going down to 2 suspend counters there.
Though, once your opponent has 2 lands in play and you know their curve largely stops at 3, you have less incentive to do something like Snapcaster Bolt, but that does play around a potential Collected Company. On the other hand, Jerry has Remand, so he can wait on the company too. So I think this is a pretty close decision, and it's unfortunate that Loxodon Smiter is the card that Jonathan wants to see in this kind of situation.
All right, looks like Jerry's going to go ahead and go with the line of just passing. Ooh, Voice of Resurgence, another scary one versus Jerry's type of deck. Of course, if Jerry wants to cast something on Jonathan's turn, he's going to go ahead and get an elemental token out of the deal.
Yeah, so Jerry's got some interesting decisions here. The thing about Tarmogoyf is Snapcaster interacts very well against Tarmogoyf because if Jonathan were to play Tarmogoyf and Jerry Snapcaster Lightning Bolted it, then the Lightning Bolt would be exiled from the graveyard, so the Tarmogoyf could actually die to it. But now at this point that there's a Remand in the graveyard, the Goyf is big enough that it won't.
Oh, wow. That Remand draw for Jerry, though, seems huge here.
He's got 1 main deck Anger of the Gods. It's going to be able to kill both of Jonathan's creatures, and it exiles Voice of Resurgence, so that is pretty impressive.
Ancestral Vision now ticking down to 1, so Jerry's going to have a full grip the following turn after assumedly casting this Anger of the Gods.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of pretty hard to resist snapping off the 2 for 1, killing a creature that's very difficult to deal with. And again, Jerry has 1 main deck Anger. It's going to work out very well here. He's going to wipe the board with a pending Ancestral Visions.
Funny enough, Jonathan's paid enough life off of his lands that Timely Reinforcements isn't going to gain Jerry life if he wants to cast it.
Yeah, no. Hey, Jonathan's refreshing his board. He's played 2 more creatures. He played a creature last turn. He played a creature turn 1. But look at this. Jerry's just up on so many cards. Like, he can Path the Smiter. He can Spell Snare the Tarmogoyf. This leaves Jerry at 18 with a really dominating grip of cards, if not a board presence, because that's just not how Jerry's deck tends to work.
Cryptic Command and Spell Snare also viable for that Tarmogoyf. Looks like Jerry might be going for that Timely Reinforcements here, but like you said, just a grip full of nothing but action, while Jonathan almost has nothing left.
And Jerry taking the opportunity to cast Timely Reinforcements. He's kind of given up on getting an equal amount of life since is ahead on life, but he still gets 3 mana for 3 1/1s.
I could have used the Flooded Strand and Lightning Bolt to get him down below.
True, that's a good point. You know, I don't know if you thought of that one.
It's the subtle lines.
So as Tarmogoyf, it's really hard to resist snapping off a Spell Snare, but it looks like Jonathan is just not interested in offering that up. So Jerry's got some interesting options here too. He can go block 1 on either of Jonathan's creatures, then Lightning Bolt it post-combat, as well as Path the other one. It's possible that since Jonathan hasn't played a land yet, Jerry does want to keep up Spell Snare. So Jerry can also just take a little bit of damage here. He could just block the Smiter and take 3 and then just kind of see what his options are end of turn, whether that's cast Lightning Bolt, cast Path, cast Spell Snare, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, you don't frequently see Snapcaster Mage targeting timely reinforcements, but that is also an option Jerry does have if he gets too low or too many creatures are presented on Jonathan's side.
So a good chance Jerry just sacks Flooded Strand. He can get an island. He can then Spell Snare with that island. Then he can Lightning Bolt the Smiter with the Steam Vents here.
And again, Jerry's draw just lining up very, very well versus Jonathan, who only has a Lightning Bolt left in his hand.
Yeah, when this blue-red deck, when everything sequences correctly, when you have turn 1 visions and then disruptions on turns 2, 3, and 4, like it ends up looking really impressive. And now Jerry's ahead. He's got 4 cards in hand to Jonathan's 1, with a Kessig Wolf Run being the draw there. But more importantly, 3 of the cards in Jerry's hand are 2-for-1s. Snapcaster Mages and Cryptics are both 2-for-1s.
Hey, Jerry, 1 land off of being able to Snapcaster a Cryptic command, but well, he has multiple draws to get there.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be happy enough just pathing the Wildwood and keeping up Cryptic. He might go Snap Bolt just to kill the Hierarch end of turn and to increase his clock. That actually seems very reasonable to me because Jerry does have Jonathan down to 12 already.
Yeah, Jonathan with only 1 card in hand, and Jerry with a leftover Snapcaster Mage, as well as that Cryptic command still. Things are looking on the up and up for him. What kind of things does Jonathan need to draw to really get out of this, if he does have anything left?
Looks like the bolt's going to the face, by the way. Jonathan needs to draw Collected Company. I think that's his best chance because Company gives him two threats and 1 card, and right now he's just outcarded by so much. But realistically, even a Company is not going to get it done. I mean, I guess Jerry is going to Cryptic this bolt here. So if Jonathan drew Company off the top, he might have a chance, but Jerry's still in very good shape.
Yeah, that Cryptic seeming like it'll be the final nail in the coffin. Electrolyze the draw off of that Cryptic command. Alrighty.
Take a look at Jerry's graveyard there.
Yeah. Well, Luxton Smiter, not exactly Collected Company, but it is a big blocker.
No, it is not exactly Collected Company. I agree with that. Jerry is slightly running out of answers here, but he's still going to be able to like snap path the Smiter, attack for 4. Jonathan goes down to 3, and then be able to have Electrolyze up with 4 creatures in play against no cards in hand.
It looks like we'll probably be going to a game 2 pretty quickly here. Alrighty. Jonathan does draw another spell, Knight of the Reliquary here, but at 3 life, facing down multiple creatures and, well, an Electrolyze that we know about in Jerry's hand.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan is actually just dead to the creatures attacking, and it doesn't really need much else other than that.
And Jerry wins the first game here over Jonathan Angelescu. And we are off to sideboard. All right, what kind of things? We already talked about Jerry's sideboard a little bit, although this matchup is obviously different.
Yeah, Jerry's kind of pre-boarded here. He's got 2 Timelies in the main. He's got an Anger in the main. He gets to bring in a second Anger. That's about it. Engineered Explosives has some merit, as does maybe Is It Staticaster. Jonathan, on the other hand, has a couple hateful cards. He has Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, which could make Jerry's spells all cost 1 more, since Jerry has just all non-creature spells. And Jonathan also has, if he wants like Magus of the Moon, Thrun the Last Troll, Choke is an especially effective card, so I would expect to see the Chokes come in. I don't know how good Magus of the Moon is against the deck with Lightning Bolt, so I would be less inclined to bring those in. But Jerry does have, or Jonathan does have a lot of cards he wants to bring in. And Lightning Bolt and Path to Exile among his weaker cards that he can choose from here.
Yeah, I see a Wear and Tear coming in from Jerry's side. What is that good for?
That's good for killing Choke. As it turns out, they have deck lists. So Jerry knows that he's going to be facing against 2 Chokes here, and Choke makes it so all islands do not untap. And Jerry has tons of islands in his deck, so he's certainly not a fan of seeing Choke in play.
All right, we can see the sideboarding options for Jonathan. He's taking out some of the Quasali Pride Mages.
Yeah, they're just a 2/2 Exalted in this matchup. There's no enchantments or artifacts worth mentioning that can get killed. I mean, Jerry is boarding in like Engineered Explosives and Relic of Progenitus, but those aren't really great Quasali Pride Mage targets to begin with. Funny if Jerry actually has Negate, because Negate counters Choke and Collected Company.
Ah.
And, well, maybe picks up a stray Bolt or Path, though I would imagine Jonathan's taking at least the Paths out. And potentially some of the bolts, too. It's funny. Lightning Bolt's a card nobody ever sides out, but you should side it out, I think, a bit more than people tend to.
Fair enough. as somebody in chat mentioned, actually, Nahiri can take care of the chokes as well.
She can, but she is kind of expensive, so I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't work. Because a lot of the times that Jonathan's going to play choke, it's a Jerry plays like an Anger of the Gods or something along, or a Cryptic Command or something, and you just go choke. I guess Jerry just has the one Cryptic Command. Look, I like me a blue deck with lots of 1-0s, and Jerry has delivered. I mean, the one Anger of the Gods came out, and it was very effective.
Yes. All right, looks like Jonathan is ready with his sideboarding options. Jerry taking a final look here in the last 20, 30 seconds of sideboarding options.
Yeah.
Now, how frequently do you see the Harbinger deck taking out the Emrakul?
Not all that often, because taking out the Emrakul really does make Nahiri so much less of a threat. But I can imagine matchups where if you only want 2 Nahiris in your deck or something along those lines, Emrakul could go along with it.
All right, here we are for Game 2 between Jerry Thompson and Jonathan Angelescu. This is round 13. We're playing Modern. We have one more round of Modern. And let's take a look at these players' hand. Jerry's seems fine. Got some lands, got some early interaction.
He once again is running into the problem of not having Spell Snare active on turn 2, but I think that's still a very keepable hand, especially with the path. Jonathan, on the other hand, he's got some decisions to make, because his hand is Bolt, which does nothing for most of the games, just a finisher. Tarmogoyf, which is going to be kind of small unless he runs out the Bolt, and then 3-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop with just 2 lands, no nobles. That's just not a great hand. I think it's worth keeping, but if you're Jonathan, I think it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those borderline hands. A little bit slow. He needs to draw some lands, although a lot of his spells in the deck cost 2 or less, so hopefully he can draw something that makes that a little bit better.
Jonathan, paying 2 life to deal 3 damage with a lightning bolt. Great deal. Oh, there's the noble. Slightly too late, because now Jonathan could play the noble, and I think it's a reasonable play, but it's just it's not accelerating anything out. He's going to play a 3-drop on turn 3.
Yeah, a bit awkward there, but again, with so many expensive cards in his hand, it does make sense.
I think even though Jerry would like to leave Spell Snare up, it feels like he's priced into going Cascade Bluffs, add double blue, cast 2 Serum Visions. So
looks like that's going to be his play, in fact. Or he could play Relic of Progenitus should he choose to keep both cards on top. Although I guess he'd just draw the one he kept anyways.
Yeah, and I think that one of the reasons to tap out here, too, is that Spell Snare is at its best at stopping Tarmogoyf, but Relic of Progenitus kind of also stops Tarmogoyf. It exiles all cards from all graveyards, so it at least shrinks the Goyf once again. And it looks like Jerry's happy playing the Relic and start trimming down Jonathan's graveyard. Jerry can also target himself if he wishes.
Another Tarmogoyf the draw here for Jonathan, who is just going to lead out with that Knight of the Reliquary.
Yeah, Jerry would love to draw a Lightning Bolt. And such a vision is actually kind of interesting. So, yeah, Cascade Bluffs has some drawbacks here in that you can't keep Spell Snare up and Suspend Visions and use Path to Exile, because you have to tap that Cascade Bluffs on your main phase if you want to suspend Visions. So, could see just starting with the Serum Visions here.
Geez, Relic actually kind of wrecking the Knight of the Reliquary as well. Remember, Knight of the Reliquary gets +1/+1 for each land in the graveyard, but that Relic is just doing some major work here.
Yeah, there's something with Relic and Reliquary there, but I'm not finding it, so we're just gonna move on.
All right, Serum Visions here.
Thanks for the update. Suspended Visions, and then Jerry choosing not to path the Knight, just keeping up Spell Snare. Ooh, so Jonathan could actually tap 3 mana, sack a land to the Knight to get the 4th land, and then cast Collected Company main phase. And he'll be safe from any counterspell. That sounds reasonable. The one drawback, though, is he knows that Jerry has 2 copies of Anger of the Gods, and that just plays right into Anger of the Gods.
But it looks like he is going to go with that plan. Remember, Knight of the Reliquary, you can sacrifice a forest or a plains, and then search your library for a land card. Puts it on the battlefield untapped, and that's going to give Jonathan his 4th vital land. He's going to opt to get a Wooded Foothills here, which is going to make his Knight of the Reliquary a little bit bigger, but again, with that Relic of Progenitus, Anger of the Gods would certainly be a pretty good hit here for Jerry. And we'll see what this Collected Company can find. Oh, Smiter's a good one. That gets out of Anger range.
Oh, yeah, that is very appealing.
Wow. Okay, double Smiter.
And Jerry does not have any Supreme Verdicts in his deck, so this is going to be very difficult for Jerry to to escape from.
Yeah, he's going to use a path here at the end of turn to optimize his mana use.
So Jerry can play Nahiri and exile the Knight right now. And then the Smiter kills Nahiri, presumably. Yeah, I mean, Jerry can try to grind through this, but the problem is his hand is quite poor.
Far cry from last game where we saw Jerry with all of the answers. This time, well, even though Jonathan kept a little bit of a slow hand, it looks like it's progressing rather nicely.
Yeah, Jerry was forced into a lot of awkward mana tapping turns where he had to suspend visions and use serum visions, and never really had a time to use spell snare. In fact, there hasn't even been a spell snare target presented. So Jerry's answers just really did not line up well.
Loxodon Smiter here taking care of Nahiri with 4 extra points of damage. Second Knight of the Reliquary, the first one, of course, meeting the Exile.
Well, Anger of the Gods, that was a good draw. So now Jerry can Relic, sack the Relic, or he actually doesn't even need to. He can just, because he Relic Jonathan down to 1 land in graveyard, he can actually just Anger here. So I think between Path, Nahiri, and Anger, Jerry actually might be able to stabilize. He's got a Visions on 2, so he's going to get hit down to 12. He needs Jonathan not to draw an untapped land here, because Thrun would be a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
But with the Smiter hits Jerry to 12, Visions goes to 1. The Goyf is going to get spell snared, and then next turn he gets hit down to 8, then Visions goes off. Pretty good chance of finding a Snapcaster. He can also at some point, it takes a lot of mana, but he could trade Celestial Colonnade for that Loxodon Smiter.
Yeah, things looking a lot better here for Jerry than it did a few turns ago. Spell Snare is going to counter that Tarmogoyf. And Ancestral Vision ticking down to 1. Another Nahiri the draw. Wow.
That was it. I mean, that's exactly what Jerry needed, because now not only does that kill Loxodon Smiter, exiles it, Jerry also just has a Nahiri in play. So he's just getting a advantage from that over time as well, with the Visions out. Actually, Jerry went from being what looked like a huge underdog to being a huge favorite. He's up by a lot here. Thrun is good, and drawing an untapped green source to play a Thrun does put Jerry under pressure, because that is a hard card to defeat. But Jerry's going to draw so many cards that, assuming he can just string together some timely reinforcements, he's got a lot of chump blocks, and even like Snapcaster into Serum Visions to just chump block the Thrun. Like he's got some options here.
Yeah, whereas Jerry was previously looking like he was going to go no wary, now he's going Nahiri. Ancestral Vision looks like it's going to finally come off suspend. Jerry's going to draw a fresh new 3 cards. We'll see what it finds him.
Well, a bunch of bolts, so not exactly what he wanted. I wonder if there's an opportunity here to race with Celestial Colonnade. Seems difficult, but it's possible. Jerry can also plus maybe discard this negate, since or spell snare. Like either of those is not the most appealing here.
It looks like Spell Snare is going to hit the bin.
Yeah, that wasn't actually a great Ancestral Visions, but you do win the race against Thrun here. So Jerry goes to 10. He colonnades Jonathan down to 10. Jerry goes to 6 off the Thrun attack. Then next turn, Jerry goes colonnade, attack you to 6, and then double bolt you. The problem being that he's short red sources, because he can't. Colonnade doesn't tap for red, so he can't attack and bolt with colonnade.
So it looks like he's going to be short, 2 red sources on the final turn where he activates Colonnade?
He'll be short, yeah. He needs 2, and he'll only have access to 1. He's got the Steam Vents in hand. Though actually, no, Jerry has it. He gets to leave Cascade Bluffs untapped, attack with Colonnade, use Cascade Bluffs for double red, double bolt. That is awesome. And at this point, I mean, if he goes for it, Jonathan doesn't have a way to stop it. And there are no creatures in the graveyard because Jerry's Relic, so the Scavenging Ooze doesn't save Jonathan either.
Oh, wow. Brutal. We'll see if that's the line that Jerry finds. I assume that's going to be the case.
And that's got to be his plan here. Cascade Bluffs, for all the shade I threw at Cascade Bluffs earlier for making Jerry's mana tapping awkward, it's gonna pay off this game.
Oh. Vigilance on Celestial Colonnade really proving its worth. And I think with Jonathan only having a Sacred Foundry, I mean, Jerry might be worried about a path, but there are 4 paths in Jonathan's list.
But you can assume that there's a good chance he sided them out, and even if he didn't, you just have to go for it. You're not beating Thrun in a long game.
And here we see the Colonnade hitting Jonathan down to 6. Cascade Bluffs filtering the blue from Colonnade.
And Jerry presumably putting himself in good position to make top 4 with this second lightning bolt here.
Wow. And Jerry Thompson takes the match versus Jonathan Angelescu. You see the players shake hands there. Jeez, that was crazy. Welcome back to the booth here at the Magic Online Championships. That was round 13. We have some red zone coverage from Marshall Sutcliffe. Let's go down there now.
All right, hey guys, welcome back to the Red Zone, and yeah, we're all set. So let's jump in here. I've got Sam Black versus Alexander Ivanov queued up for us here, and you can see that we're in the first turn of game 1 here from Sam Black. He's playing a Mishra's Bauble. Excuse me, Alexander's playing the Mishra's Bauble. And he's not the only one playing a Mishra's Bauble, so Sam Black plays one of his own. Here's an Inquisition that takes away a Jace and a Wild Nacatl to follow up. You can see that Alexander's taken a much more aggressive stance here than some of the decks that we've seen, which were leaning a little bit more towards the mid-range. But Wild Nacatl here from Ivanov is going to probably apply a fair bit of pressure here to Sam Black, who looks like he is woefully behind. Was going to lean on that Jace. Let's see if he can find anything to interact with.
Marshall, I welcome our new Mishra's Bauble overlords.
Well, you've got 2 of them here. Lightning Bolt, but Mutagenic Growth is going to save it. That's going to prompt an attack here anyway. And as you can see, you know, one of the things about this deck is that it does do a lot of damage to itself. That is on purpose, but it also is a downside, as the Snapcaster Mage is now taking big chunks. And you can see the payoff here. So this is Death Shadow. It gets -X, -X, where X is your life total. So, well, Ivanov has got himself down to 6 with some help from Sam Black here. He has made a 7/7 for 1 mana, but later on in the game, that card looks a little bit worse. So it does seem to be holding down the fort here as Tarmogoyf outclassed by the Death Shadow. Sam's going to continue to filter through. Only 1 card left in hand for Ivanov. He finds another Death Shadow, so now he's got a pair of, well, they're 10/10s, but this is not good news for him, as Snapcaster Mage plus Lightning Bolt does finish things off for Sam Black here. So that's going to bring us to the second game. And let's see what we've got in the early stages. An Inquisition takes away a Scavenging Ooze, and now a Thoughtseize takes away a Spell Snare. What is he clearing the way for? A Tarmogoyf, of course, and a Death Shadow, so he puts 6 power on the board with just that 1 turn. Lightning Bolt, Mutagenic Growth. Wow, check that out. Saves the Death Shadow, and that was probably the key sequence in the game, as now all of a sudden Ivanov gets to attack for 8, and put a massive clock on Sam Black, and that's it. Sam doesn't find an answer with Cataxian Probe, and he scoops him up. So that leaves us with the third and final game. Steam Vents tapped. Foothills is going to find, this time, a Monastery Swiftspear. This is one of the other creatures that this deck plays. There's a Seal of Fire to kill it, though, for Sam Black. Or does it? Once again, we see Mutagenic Growth to the rescue. And again, this performs 2 functions in the deck. It's going to help Alexander get his life total lower for his Death Shadow. And, of course, in this case, it's also going to attempt to save a Monastery Swiftspear. So with the Prowess Trigger and the Mutagenic Growth and the Seal of Fire on the stack, Lightning Bolt is going to target the Swiftspear, and that does actually get the job done. Swiftspear down. Ivanov down to 13. And he's got a Tarmogoyf that is a 4/5, so a very good threat. He finds an Inquisition to take away a Spell Snare, which clears the way for a mismatched Tarmogoyf? Alexander, how dare you? Anyway, whatever. It's still a 5/6, and applying huge pressure to Sam Black here. Double Goyf attack is going to drop him down to 3. And a Death Shadow as a 5/5. This is going to be incredibly difficult for Sam to deal with. And in fact, he cannot. And Alexander Ivanov, with that Death Shadow aggro deck, takes down Sam Black here in the third round of Modern. Kenji, Luis, what do you guys got?
Thanks for that playback in the red zone, Marshall. We have a match between Joe Spanier and Magnus Lanto currently going on, if we want to jump down to that right now. It is the Lantern versus Dredge deck. Luis, you're going to have to help me out. I know you've rung some bells in your day, so you can probably help me out on this Ghoul Colors Bell deck.
Yeah, these are the 2 of the most beloved decks in Magic, Dredge and Lantern. And looks like Joe had the lock here. Take a look before we leave here. We've got Ensnaring Bridge, making so none of Magnus's creatures can attack. Grafdigger's Cage, making sure Ancient Grudge can't be played from the graveyard. And then Welding Jar, just in case anything goes wrong, with Lantern of Insight and Ghoul Caller's Bell, managing draw steps. So that was our live look-in at Lantern Control versus Dredge.
Yeah, this Lantern deck has actually been doing some real good work. Welcome back to the booth here, friends. Round 13 of the Magic Online Championships. We have one more round of Modern. We have one more round of Modern after this, and it looks like we have a few more matches still live. We're going to jump in right now to Peter and Niels Norlander. And I think we have a match between two Infect decks.
Nice.
Yeah, so it should be a little bit interesting here. Looks like both players have some Infect already.
Yeah, unfortunately, I got word that Niels mulliganed to Norlander this game into a decent 6-card hand, so that's why he's kind of a little behind on the board.
You were waiting all weekend to say it. You had to just use it while you had the chance.
Look, part of providing good commentary is striking while the iron is hot.
No, it's sizzling, buddy. It is sizzling. All right, what do we see here?
Peter is taking a look at Niels Norlander's hand, and he's gonna let's take a look at what he's seeing here.
3 Inkmoth Nexus on Niels' side. I certainly think he kept a lander in this match.
So right now, so Peter's hand is currently, or Niels' hand rather, is currently Noble Hierarch, Groundswell, Vines of the Vastwood, Might of Old Krosa, and Dismember. So in fact, no lands, just like I said. But he's got a lot of pump spells, but not very many green sources. So his bottleneck right now, Niels, is being able to cast his spells, because he's got 3 different pump spells that cost green mana and only 1 breeding pool.
It looks like Inkmoth Nexus might try to jump in front of the other Inkmoth Nexus.
And the funny thing about Infect is no matter how big one of the Nexi is, the Infect -1/-1 counters means it's just going to die end of turn.
He'll never be able to activate it again. All right, Flighted Agent, the follow-up by Peter. And end of turn, Niels is going to go ahead and cast Dismember on that Blighted Agent. We'll see if Peter has a way to save it. He does not, though.
Peter's hand actually is currently all lands. He's got Catacombs Forest and Inkmoth Nexus in hand, so he's not in great shape here, just because they're trading cards. That Dismember is key, taking away the only threat that Peter has. And the funny thing about the Nexus, though, by the way, is it's got a -1/-1 counter on it, so it's currently alive because the Noble protected until end of turn. But if Peter activates it, it will immediately die.
So this is the case of actually having a Norlander versus an All-Lander.
Yeah, it is. And this turn we're going to see Niels decide whether he wants to develop his board or potentially start using these pump spells. He doesn't have lethal quite yet. He can attack for 6 poison, put Peter to 9 poison, but I think Niels is in great shape here, because even no matter what he goes for this turn, whether it's playing a Noble, playing a Blighted Agent, attacking with Nexus, right now Peter has no poison creature in play. He's got nothing with Infect, so he's not really threatening Niels at all.
Yeah, and it looks like Niels is going to be the one going on the offensive here with that Blighted Agent, leaving up both his Inkmoth Nexus. Why would you not attack with an Inkmoth? I guess just because the Exalted trigger.
Asked and answered.
Second Inkmoth here for Peter, and that one can fortunately attack. Now, sometimes we've seen Infect players deal regular damage all the way, and Peter might try to go with that here.
Well, I think Niels has to think about this, because if Peter had something like Become Immense plus Might of Old Krosa, or rather Groundswell, that will deal 11 damage. So Niels has to think like, how do I end up losing this? I feel like I'm ahead. I've got these 3 pump spells in hand. So this is a good attack by Peter. His Noble's not doing much for him right now, and this could actually put him in a position where Niels is forced to trade a Nexus for it. And I think that is the safe play. I would recommend doing so.
It looks like Niels is going to opt for that here, indeed. And unlike Peter's Inkmoth Nexus with a Infect counter on it, the Noble Hierarch is just going to die at the end of turn.
Yeah. And drawing that land makes this a lot safer, because Peter's at 5 Infect, so Blighted Agent attacks. It's a 2/2 off Noble, and then Niels can cast one of his pump spells and then save Vines of Vastwood to save the Blighted Agent if he needs it. It can give it hexproof. So starting with Might of Old Krosa makes sense, because that's the one, if you cast it during the main phase, it will give +4/+4.
We'll see what Niels opts to go with here.
And he's got he's still got a bunch of pump spells in hand. He's just not going to need them. Vines of Vastwood would in fact stop, because it doesn't actually give hexproof. it says target creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponent controls this turn. So if it resolves, the Might of Old Krosa will not. So Niels will want to respond here.
We do know Niels has a Vines of his own in hand. It looks like, he's going for a Groundswell in response.
Yeah, Groundswell in response, and then that will do it.
Sure, and that is going to be the match. Niels takes it over Peter in the Infect mirror. Welcome back to the booth here for the Magic Online Championships. That was round 13. We have one more round left of Modern. Please do stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.